In 1338, a tiny Silk Road cemetery near Lake Issyk-Kul buried 118 people in desperate haste. Years before Europe ever knew the name Black Death, their gravestones quietly blamed pestilence, but the real origin of humanity's deadliest pandemic was lost for centuries. Now, ancient DNA reveals the truth behind these forgotten graves, forcing us to question everything we thought we knew about where the plague began. So, what secret waited, locked inside those bones? In the summer of 1886, Russian archaeologists arrived in the shadow of the Tian Shan Mountains, drawn by rumors of ancient Christian gravestones scattered near Lake Issyk-Kul. Nikolai Pantusov, an Orientalist and local administrator, and Daniel Chwolson, a scholar from St. Petersburg, began to clear the soil from two small cemeteries at Kara-Jigach and Barana. Their work uncovered a cluster of stone markers carved with Syriac inscriptions, some weathered, others still sharp after centuries underground. These were the final resting places of a Nestorian Christian community, traders who had made their lives along the Silk Road. Pantusov and Chwolson carefully recorded each grave, noting names, dates, and the haunting repetition of a single word: pestilence. Among the stones, one burial stood out. It belonged to a man named San Mak, who died in 1338. His epitaph was simple: he died of pestilence. Over the course of just 2 years, 118 burials were dated to 1338 and 1339, a sudden, devastating spike that dwarfed the numbers from earlier and later years. The archaeologists documented the graves and their inscriptions, then packed the bones and stones for transport to St. Petersburg. There, the remains faded into museum storage. Their story was paused for more than a century, waiting for the tools and questions of a new era. Philip Slavin, a historian who studies medieval environments, began his search far from the windswept cemeteries of Central Asia. His investigation started in the archives, as he sifted through 19th century excavation reports, faded field notes, and museum catalogs scattered across Europe and Russia. Among these records, he found references to the Kara-Jigach and Barana cemeteries, sites tied to a sudden wave of deaths in 1338 and 1339, with tombstones inscribed in Syriac that mentioned pestilence. Slavin's attention sharpened as he traced the fate of the bones and stones unearthed by Pantusov and Chwolson. The trail led to the Peter the Great Museum of Anthropology and Ethnography in St. Petersburg, where the remains had lain largely untouched for over a century. He worked through acquisition ledgers and correspondence, confirming that the very skeletons from the Issyk-Kul excavations were preserved in museum storage. Convinced that these forgotten bones held answers to one of history's most haunting questions, Slavin reached out to specialists in ancient DNA. The evidence he gathered, precise dates, explicit mentions of pestilence, and a clear archival chain, set the stage for a new kind of investigation, one that would soon move from dusty records to the molecular secrets locked inside ancient teeth. Inside the secure ancient DNA laboratories at the Max Planck Institute, the investigation pivoted from archives to molecules. Russian curators at the Peter the Great Museum granted permission to sample teeth from 7 individuals, all recovered from the Kara-Jigach cemetery and precisely dated to the years 1338 and 1339. Researchers targeted the dense dental pulp, a tiny chamber that can shelter traces of blood-borne pathogens for centuries. Each tooth underwent rigorous decontamination and was processed in clean rooms designed to exclude even the faintest trace of modern DNA. Extraction blanks and negative controls shadowed every step, ensuring that no contamination could cloud the results. From these 7 teeth, 3 labeled BSK01, BSK003, and BSK007 yielded unmistakable signatures of Yersinia pestis. The DNA fragments showed the classic hallmarks of ancient origin: short degraded strands, and a distinct pattern of chemical damage. Sequencing the full genomes, the team compared them to a global data set of over 1,300 plague strains. The Kara-Jigach genomes sat precisely at the branching point known as the Big Bang node, the most recent common ancestor of all Black Death lineages. For the first time, the origin of the pandemic was pinned to a single place, a single moment, and a single genetic fingerprint. Across the Tian Shan Mountains, the plague bacterium was not a sudden visitor. For centuries, marmots, gerbils, and voles carried Yersinia pestis in their blood, with fleas passing the infection quietly among them. Modern studies show that these mountains remain a natural reservoir for plague, and that even today, the closest relatives of the ancient strain still circulate in local rodents. In the early 14th century, periods of warmer, wetter weather swept through Central Asia, vegetation flourished, rodent numbers likely surged, and the risk of disease spilling into human communities grew. The Nestorian settlement by Lake Issyk-Kul was more than a remote village. It stood at a crossroads of Eurasian trade. Archaeologists uncovered coins, minted in Iran, and jewelry crafted in distant lands, evidence that merchants and goods flowed in from across the Silk Road. Caravans loaded with textiles, spices, and grain made regular stops, bringing with them not only wealth but also stowaway rats and fleas. From this small community, the infection traveled west, carried in the shadows of camel trains and merchant wagons. By 1346, the Black Death reached the Crimean port of Kaffa, where chroniclers described the Mongol army besieging the city as plague raged in their ranks. Whether by siege or by ship, the disease soon crossed into Europe, setting off a catastrophe that would sweep across continents. Pandemics still emerge from hidden corners, just as they did in the 14th century. Ancient DNA shows our vulnerabilities remain global, and the next outbreak may already be moving among us. Share your thoughts below.